Okay, so you guys want to start by introducing yourselves?
Ladies first.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Kiara Danielle Brown, and
I'm Jeff Metzler.
And what's your connection to Mary Poppins? What's your history with it?
You first.
I opened and closed the first national tour of Mary Poppins.
I came into the Broadway company shortly after opening as the vacation swing, found myself a permanent slot in the show until about 2009, late 2009, and I popped in and out of the company a few times before it closed in 2013? 14?
No, it was 13, I think.
Okay.
13.
No, wait, because I came off of tour in 2012. I started in 2009, did 4 years, so 2012. So then a year after 2013.
There it is.
There we go.
So
You
you're
can check it
both-
on IMDb.
Right.
Yes. Fact check, please.
You were both involved in the show for a long time, so one question is why was this show a draw for you, considering how much time that you were involved with it?
And this will all be very interesting because we were both in completely different companies of the show, so
Absolutely.
our experiences being on tour and doing it on Broadway are going to be very different and probably very interesting. Go ahead.
But the cool thing is that a lot of people who were in the Broadway company simultaneously, while we were simultaneously out on tour, they actually jumped into the tour or out
Or
of the
vice
tour,
versa.
or
A lot
vice
of
versa.
people from the tour
So
came to Broadway.
people were crossing paths.
That wasn't your question.
That wasn't the question. I'm sorry. See,
So
going
why-
off on a tangent.
Why were you drawn to Mary Poppins?
Because I grew up with this musical since before I can even remember. Like this just played in a loop in my house because my mother was obsessed with Julie Andrews. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think
It
it's
just started from there.
Yeah, all Disney films. Watch the film. I think
Right.
was a big inspiration for me. Also, I think as an actor, your job is to know what you do, what your skill set is, and I saw the show in London because I wanted to see it because I love the material. I was very excited about it, but then I saw it and I was like, this is totally within my wheelhouse of skills. I'm a tapper,
Absolutely.
I'm a guy. They need a lot of guys. It's a guy-heavy show.
So heavy that I even played a guy in the scene. So there we go.
Exactly. So
Were you a chimney sweep?
yeah, everyone, all the girls,
All the girls.
everyone
Yeah.
was in 7 times except for a few principals.
So throughout your time with the show, what was your favorite scene to be in, if you had one?
Well, speaking of Step in Time, I think it is a tie between Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious and Step in Time. Just,
And
anything
why?
with
I'm like, no!
anything with a driving rhythm. Why?
No,
Not
no.
Step in Time?
No! Did you do the... I know.
I did 10.
Those
Listen,
are my most
I
stressful.
jumped around in 7 times, so many different tracks. As people would
Yeah.
leave, then I would jump in one area and then do another one. And then at one point I found myself dancing on the edge of the proscenium, it was
I
wild.
hear you.
But not your
The
favorite
double
scene?
pencil turns were enough to
Oh
give me
my gosh, yes.
ulcers. Part of the number we do double pencil turns, series of 2s in tap shoes with brooms, and there's a bunch of people, and it was always mine. My favorite scene to do. I loved, and you're not going to be familiar with this, but there's a number called Temper Temper in the show.
Oh, yes.
Back in the day, it changed to Playing the Game. And that number, it was the same costumes, the same people, the toys came to life, but something that was just a little bit more maniacal. And it was kind of one of the only times on the show, with the exception of the bank, where the ensemble actually has an opportunity to really embrace being different characters and just really be something else and not be so bogged down by how technical the dancing was or how exhausting the choreography tied with the singing can be. So I personally really loved that number. I also loved Go Fly a Kite, which I wasn't even in. I was off stage singing. But I love standing there off stage every night because it's such a glorious song and it's so beautiful on stage and everyone's having a good time and Mary's coming back and the kids.
I know. Just in a bathrobe, mic's on, and Go Fly a Kite. Most of the people stood off stage and
you
sang
just get to sing,
It was
which
beautiful.
is really nice. And it was it sounded glorious.
Glorious. I remember going back really quick to what you were saying. Temper Temper, I was obsessed with when I first read through the script and the score. I'm like, yes, I love this song so much. And then I got the horrible news that they were cutting it out of the tour and replacing it with Playing the Game, which I ended up loving Playing the Game, but
it's still fun.
It was still super fun, but Temper Temper just had such a driving beat, and it was just maniacal. It was devious and So
So you were both in Playing the Game at some point? You both
Yes.
performed in that number?
yes.
I was in the rugby company when we switched it over. So one night we
Uh-huh.
did the one. Oh no, that's a lie. I'm lying. My closing night when Scarlett, one of our Marys, left. That's when they cut it out of the show. But when I came back to the company, I ended
It
up
was,
doing it.
right.
a few times.
Because they premiered it with the touring company, and they worked on it. We had 10.10 million revisions before they finally set the number, and then they brought it over. And I think Jeffrey Garrett came and set it on you guys.
Thanks
So we
for saving
have
us that time.
we have one question from Meryl, who's playing the toy soldier, specifically about playing the game.
Oh,
That
Toy
was
Soldier!
One time.
Asking, how did you get in touch with your magical, youthful side for the show, in particular for that number?
I mean, I'm magical and youthful every day of my life, so
I was 21.
Just kidding. I think that it goes back to what I mentioned before about growing up with Mary Poppins. There was always a magical element. You can't help but feel youthful and magical when you're a part of something that is Mary Poppins. I mean, I think it goes hand in hand with what the show is about and the lessons that are taught throughout the show. It applies to real life as well.
This, I guess, would be completely different than your answer, but that's okay. I guess I never felt like a need to attach myself with any kind of magical sense or useful sense for me in the show, because for me, I was a part of her magic, so I was just playing what that character was. Like, I was a statue that came to life. So for me, I was just a statue that was, like, coming to life and breaking out of this mold and whatever, and that was my reality, as opposed to Mary, who is making some of that magic. And in terms of youthful, there were certainly a number of adults who played the kite. What are they called? The kite kids?
The
Kite dancer? I don't know.
The kite dancers.
No, that's not it.
No, not it. No, not it. Just 4 years of my life.
Yeah, you're right. There were a number of people that actually did play children as adults.
Right.
I was not one of them. Because I'm taller, I ended up playing old men. Like, I was one of the old men in the bank and, different things like that. So that was my perspective. But that's the interesting thing about Mary Poppins, I think, is that Mary Poppins probably had one of the most diverse collections of people on Broadway, because there were children, then there were old people, there were skinny people, there were bigger people.
Right.
It's a very
all shades of the rainbow. It was really beautiful.
A very colorful group of individuals.
So you mentioned, Jeff, the idea of like living in reality as your character and not really thinking about magic.
Mm-hmm.
And the woman who's playing Mary Poppins, Elizabeth, asked specifically about kind of this dichotomy between reality and magic that exists in Mary Poppins, and how you reconcile those two different worlds, especially as characters who aren't members of the Banks family, how you relate to Mary Poppins. How do you see her? What is your reality in relation to that character?
I think your reality is unique to each scene, because actually, I would say nobody in the ensemble carries through from scene one to the end as the same character.
That's right.
So you're always somebody new. So you're reinventing yourself as an actor. You're playing these very staunch, uptight English people. It's in the Victorian time. It was like right after Queen Victoria died. Is that right? Or as it was described, this is horrible, know your history, but a lot of the fashion and stuff like that in that time period, why it was so dark and long and buttoned up, comes as an immediate reaction to what was happening in history.
That's right.
And everyone was very uptight, and then, so you're doing that, but then a second later you have to jump into the scene where, like I said, you're the statue, or you're a nanny who's all of a sudden, your dress is turned a completely different color, and your life is, you've broken out of the shackles of all that the heaviness of reality.
I think that's the cool thing about Mary Poppins, where one moment you are in the, like Jeff said, the reality of the time, of the era, and then you're automatically thrown into Mary Poppins' world. Mm-hmm. Like her actual world that she creates. She's the source of the magic. So.
And how do you relate to her? Do your characters know that she's the source of that magic?
Some scenes.
Some scenes, yes. Like as Mrs. Corey, I knew because she had been a friend from yesteryear. She had been the person who George Banks was introduced to Mrs. Corey by Mary Poppins
as a kid.
He
lived the same journey.
He lived the same as his children. So we had that connection. when I was Mrs. Corey, but then I would jump to another scene where I had no idea who this was, and she created, for example, in the park. Right?
Yeah.
We're just normal, everyday people going about our business in the park, and then there's this magical world that's created because of Mary.
Yeah.
So I think you have to just be open.
Yeah. It's a constant back and forth between kind of a level of blindness to literally a spiritual awakening. I think Jolly Holiday is a great example of that. And it's different in that scene because there are people that don't know her. There are the nannies and stuff like that who go from that tight thing to all of a sudden being like, oh my gosh, they have this breath of fresh air. And like, what is this? And who is this beautiful woman? And but yet there's other characters like the statues and stuff like that who know Mary, who have been frozen in their stone for years and years. And all of a sudden there she is. And I got kind of like this like, kind of tingle thing.
Right.
Because I remember it, like, I remember standing there at the end where she's like, Mary holds her hand, feels so...
Like a pretty best friend? Yes.
Like, I would always look at her and have this moment like, there she is.
She's
like,
here, she's back.
Yeah,
like
she's back. And I think in a lot of the magic scenes, that's what it is in all the magic scenes. In Super Cal, everybody in that scene, not only Mrs. Corey is like, oh, Mary Poppins is here.
Right.
Like, it's like she's the biggest celebrity there ever was.
Right.
In Step in Time, I think, I'm going to backtrack on what I said earlier about the magic thing, is that we actually do know in Step in Time, the Sweeps all know Mary.
They know her.
And they know that she's so special, and they are her posse, they're her group.
That's her squad.
Yeah. Step in Time is really like the one of the most pivotal points of the show, because it's telling that lesson that you've got to just keep on going. Step in Time, we're here to help you, we're here to keep you from falling.
Forge ahead, that's right.
Yeah. So they're the only people that are not magical creatures that know that that she has something very special and magical about her.
Right. And she just brings out in each character, whether a magical entity or not, I think Mary brings out something specifically in Jolly Holiday and Step in Time, something that has been simmering in all the people, whether they knew it to exist or not.
Yeah.
She brings that out of people, like you said, like some kind of awakening, and brings it to the forefront.
Yeah. And we talk. A lot of people ask if you're playing Mary. People ask, what is she? Is she a witch? Is she an angel? Is she a fairy? Is she whatever? I don't know about you, but I feel like we were always told that it's not defined. She's some sort of like ethereal thing, and I think you just have to kind of make it your own without relying too much on like, I'm a witch or I'm a fairy. Like it's just kind of a special like,
don't categorize,
Tinkerbell that kind of like lives in the core of the character perhaps, or
Mary is Mary.
She's Mary.
She's
her
Mary
own
Poppins, right? She's her own.
So that was a very long answer.
That was sorry. Yeah, we did get excited.
Kiara, you mentioned Mrs. Corey, so you played Mrs. Corey
at
certain points. And when you performed as her, why do you think that her character is such an important part of the show?
I think Mrs. Corey is important in the whole entire scene because that is a moment that ties together George Banks to his son. Because George has lived this life. And actually, wait, when we're in that scene, do we know that yet? Does the audience know that?
Yeah, she says Georgie.
She says Georgie, right. Georgie. What was my accent? Jamaican, right, okay. Right. So George Banks had visited Mrs. Corey. We find out in the scene. So it's great to see, oh wow, like
humanizes.
It humanizes, exactly. So we've been down this road before with Mary, and it's like seeing a familiar face again. This is what we were talking about. Like, oh, Mrs. Corey is so excited because she knows what happens anytime Mary is present. You know, there's magic, there's excitement, there's joy, I think.
Did you think it's? I never thought about this before. Do you think it's also kind of one of the first moments the kids realize his humanity, that he also, like, I think a lot of people have forgotten that George Banks has a beating heart, and that he was a kid at some point. He was a kid, and he's lived adventures, and I think that's maybe the first time the kids and the audience,
because Jane and Michael, and they do in that scene. Jane and Michael can't believe it. Like, who are you talking about, Georgie Banks? Like, who is this man, right?
Yeah,
and so,
yeah. We also had another question about a specific character, Mrs. Lark. So this is from the person, Miss Lark, yes.
Yeah.
From Phyllis, who's playing Miss Lark, asking how she was portrayed in your productions. Was she snotty or silly or both?
Never.
I wouldn't say either.
I wouldn't say either.
How would you characterize?
I think she's kind of a grand. I don't want to say grand dame because she's not that. She's
a counterpoint to the Admiral, and I always think about that.
She's flirty.
She's flirty. How the Admiral is boisterous and silly,
goofy,
and he's goofy, but he has to stay focused and stay on task. Yeah. I feel the same about Miss Lark.
She's very tickled by that behavior and everything.
Yes.
That I think that in your black English clothes, there's always that colorful Jolly Holiday costume underneath.
Yes.
In their heads, and I think that's the same thing. You see this contrast of Admiral Boom like looking at her with her glasses and her being like, "Oh, Admiral,"
right?
But she's tickled by it. Like I think she's just very proper.
Very proper on the exterior, but she still has this childlike element to her.
Yeah,
that's what I thought of both those characters.
Yeah,
it's nice to see them interact.
Yeah, and she has this dog. She has a relatively playful relationship. Like she talks to, you know what I mean, like to him and like, oh, Willoughby and all that. So I think there's definitely. I'm trying to think. There's like another character in TV or something that even relates to her, but she's very proper. She's kind of a dame, but. I think she's human.
She is human, exactly.
We also have a question about the set of Mary Poppins.
It's very small.
Right.
It's tiny, the easiest show to travel on the road.
So how was it working with such an elaborate set?
You can see it from the tour perspective because the Broadway set and the tour set were very different.
They were different. The biggest difference in the tour set was the way that the house opened up. So on Broadway, you guys opened up as a storybook?
No, on Broadway, we had an entire house that was the width of the stage that was probably a good 25, 30 feet deep. That actually, the staircase was all in it.
Yes.
And as an entire box, the entire house moved from all the way upstage, all the way downstage, between scenes. And then the scrim goes up and there's a giant house and the roof is on there. And then the house would back up, then the nursery would drop down from the sky and separate from the roof. I don't know if you can picture that. I'm sure you can see it.
Right. And our set was similar, but they had to change it because it had to be traveled. So each theater we were in, they had to reassemble the house. So it moved forward and backwards on a track, but then opened up as a storybook. And then that also moved forward and backwards. Yeah. Wow. The sets were elaborate. They were insane. And then the nursery came down. It was held up above and then would drop down.
But the floor came in from the sides on tour, right?
The
furniture came in from the sides.
The furniture came in from the sides. Yes, we had different tracks. Oh, and that's another cool thing about tour. We traveled with floors that had the tracks ingrained in it. So each theater we wouldn't have to drill and saw and cut.
Do they know what tracks are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I heard you have a very fancy theater about it. Yeah, for me though, this set that was unfortunately we should have won for choreography, but the only Tony we won. Not that means everything, but it was designed by Bob Crowley. I think the set is probably the most exquisite, magical,
beautiful
sets on Broadway. Just danced and. I saw the show on Broadway right before I got the show. It was my Broadway debut. And the idea of making my Broadway debut in this epic piece of theater that had this set that was just so elaborate.
And each scene was so gorgeous.
Yeah.
Each scene, like Starlighters and, Mary's Flight, even, everything was so wonderful.
It really affects you. And the funny thing is you can see a show like Color Purple, The Current Revival, which is so minimal and the story is so vivid and vibrant. And you can do a show like Mary Poppins where the set is so vivid and vibrant, but helps the story be just as vivid and vibrant. And
absolutely.
It was a real treat. And our set on Broadway, a lot of the sets on Broadway are authentic to the T. Like all of the dressings of the house, as I'm sure they were on tour. They had somebody that was hired to go to England and hunt down different authentic time period pieces to dress the house. So it was all very specific and accurate, and there were all these magic tricks inside the units and
all kinds of things.
The giant umbrella that comes out of the floor.
Oh yeah, so beautiful.
A bunch of things. It was a pleasure.
It's taking me down memory lane right now.
And dangerous. And
dangerous. You had to really be aware of your surroundings with the sets, both on tour and on Broadway, because God forbid, a set piece went too early or too late, that would affect choreography or staging that was going on in a specific scene. So you have to have your wits about you, for sure.
So we've been talking a lot about positive things about your experience. What was the hardest or most challenging part about being in this show? Yes. And maybe like specific to the show, content that might help someone who's like just beginning the process, like something they may not be aware that's going to be challenging. And
how long does it run?
2 weekends.
Okay.
All I can say is practice as much as you can. The super cow letters, depending on your choreography.
I think they're going to do a modified.
Okay. Regardless of your, take the time in a mirror if you can, and just, there are certain things about the show, that number in particular, that it took us maybe 2 weeks, maybe less time to learn, but it was because each one of us put in that individual time to rehearse the letters. SUP, and now forever ingrained in me.
Forever.
Like, people will stop me and say, "Do you remember the super cow letters?" Yes, I remember the entire number. I can do it at any point in time, in my sleep, walking down the street, like, forever ingrained. So practice makes perfect.
Yeah. So was the question, the hardest part of the show, doing the show?
The hardest.
For me, the hardest part of doing this show was doing it for a long time. Mm-hmm. Doing a Broadway show, a tour, any long run for a long time is really, really, for me, challenging, because you do the same thing over and over and over again.
You have to find a way to make it fresh.
Make it fresh and different and new. And the reality is, it's also a job. So there do come nights when it's an obligation to go instead of a pleasure. And to be really blunt about that, sometimes, I don't know about you, but there are nights when your friends are going to do something, you're like, oh.
It
sounds so whiny, but
then in the same breath, you realize that the minute you step on stage, like, wow, I have the coolest job of all time.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I loved every minute of it, because people always ask, oh, well, didn't you get bored? I'm like, not really, because every night the show is different for whatever reason. And the audience sees a show that you present to them, but there's also a show going on backstage. And I know in certain roles in the show, you have breaks. And we literally had a show going on backstage. Like, never was there a moment of downtime backstage, because whether we were changing your costumes or ever, or just people are laughing, joking, you're running here, there, and everywhere, getting your wig, your makeup. So it was exhausting. I think
it's hard.
It's a exhausting show.
Do you have advice? Because even though they're not going to be running for years, all these people have jobs, so they'll be working all day, then coming to the show. And
that's hard.
Advice about staying healthy, keeping energy up. And we had some questions about, 2 show days in particular, which they will have, like how to keep it fresh, but also keep your energy.
Naps will save your life. Once again, I'm going to say that. Naps will save your life.
I think Radio City doing 4 shows a day, and Mary Poppins 2-show day was exhausting. Exhausting as doing a 4-show Radio City Christmas Spectacular.
Absolutely.
A lot of us, I think, took naps between shows backstage in the shower room here.
Right. It's just nonstop running. Like I said before, like, there's a show going on backstage in addition to the show that the audience sees.
Yeah, putting the costume changes alone add an exhausting element to the show, that we would just run the show without costumes for rehearsals,
or like a put-in,
and that was like easy, and then you do it with the costumes, like, oh my gosh.
Right.
But for me, I was a very dance-heavy track. I was lifting girls and Mary every 2 seconds.
Every 2 seconds, yeah.
For me, I had to eat well. I had to get at least 8 hours of sleep every night. I went to physical therapy probably like 3 times a week to make sure that everything was still... Because once you start doing a show long term,
absolutely,
your body starts getting lopsided internally and starts hurting. So you have to do all these things that really keep you in check and keep your machine running as efficiently and
I agree,
smoothly as possible. So rest and just keeping on top of it and being prepared for that.
Absolutely.
And was it distracting to have a lot of kids in the audience?
No. I feel like at times, we had a lot of adults.
I think we were more adults, because usually it's usually probably 2 adults to every kid. And,
right.
And I don't know.
You just don't even...
No, we didn't have a lot of kids. And usually Broadway shows is an age limit, so you're not going to have super young kids.
And once you're in a show, you're in a show. Like your focus should be in the context of the show.
Yeah.
Like so once you start performing, you're not really, unless it's something outrageous happening in the audience, you're really just in that mode of we are performing this, we're here to do a job, we're having a great time, and whatever happens in the audience happens.
Yeah. And our performances were so awe-inspiring that nobody called. They were just like, and by us, I mean Mrs. Corey and the toy soldier.
Oh my
It's a true
goodness.
story.
Well, we have a couple of questions that are not specific to Mary Poppins necessarily, but more about like the professional process. Specifically, how long is the rehearsal process for a typical show? From when you start rehearsals to when you perform?
It actually depends on the individual show. I mean, I think for Mary Poppins, we rehearsed for, I want to say 4 weeks, and then we had our first tech rehearsal. I think it was 4 weeks.
2-week tech?
It was a 2-week tech.
Which you have to also understand that was the third incarnation of Mary Poppins. It opened the West End, so they did it their way. They brought it to Broadway.
Right.
So every time, and working at Disney, we're putting up our 4th Aladdin right now, and we'll have had 25 companies of The Lion King by the end of this year.
So you figure out the formula.
So it gets tighter and tighter, and there usually is the shortest amount of time you can do it. And I would probably say 4 weeks is the shortest amount of time that you can put up a big Broadway show.
Right.
If it's an original Broadway show, though, it'll be a little bit longer, but usually not longer than 6 weeks because it all costs money, and there's a lot of pre-production that directors and choreographers do on their own.
Right.
But being a replacement is a different story. Now, I was a replacement to Mary Poppins, so I had my
hard
own
work.
own one-on-one rehearsals with our resident directors and dance captains. So I had probably 2 proper weeks of rehearsal for the show, and then I kind of knew one track, and they threw me on, and I just kind of did it. But then as a swing, you have to know all the tracks. So my rehearsal process was over probably like 2 or 3 months. While the show was going on, I would be downstairs teaching myself new tracks and going through it, or being thrown on and teaching myself the track as I'm doing it. So there's a lot of different ways.
And there was a question about the role of a swing. And
the hardest working people on Broadway.
Specifically in Mary
so
Poppins.
maybe if you could just quickly define what a swing is for the people that might not know. And then the question is, how do you train your mind and body to recall where you need to be at what time, when your role might be different every performance, even on the same day?
Oh my goodness.
So what a swing is, essentially a swing is an understudy for the ensemble players. So in Mary Poppins, we have people in the ensemble that understudied Marion Burton. All those people, and so they would leave the ensemble and go play Mary, and then there's an empty spot in the ensemble. So there's a set of people off stage, ensemble understudies or swings, that know a certain portion of the cast in different levels, so that you would have your first covers, your second covers, and your third covers. And you have costumes for all of those things. Swings are very expensive in the Broadway world because you have so many sets of costumes and shoes and rehearsal time, stuff like that. It's a crazy, crazy, crazy job. Sometimes, I hate to say it, but I'm always honest, sometimes very thankless. Because you don't get to do opening night, or you don't always get to do the Macy's Day Parade or the Tonys or the special TV things, but you save the day.
Every time this one goes on, they save the day.
You save the day, but you know what each person does. Super Cal and Step in Time were probably the hardest because one day, because Super Cal on Broadway was done in so many different choreographic levels. And there were a lot of like cannons, so you're like, okay, I'm this person, so I go on the 3 and the 4 and the 5, and you just have to know. It's the craziest thing, but our minds are brilliant. So practice with anything, you get better and your mind gets sharper. And I don't think my mind will ever be as sharp as it was when I was a swing, because you get on stage and you're just like, okay, I've got to do this, but I can't just do this. I have to like give face, and I have to be honest about give an honest performance as well. Like I can't just fill the spot. So, but let me tell you, when you finish the show, it's just like
champion. Yes.
Like you feel like the sense of accomplishment is so major as a swing because
I commend you all.
Yeah, and it's
Hail
kind
to
of
the swings.
yeah, and it's kind
Really
of fun for
difficult.
the rest of the show as well to mix up that energy and have
It adds
somebody new
brilliant
in the
energy.
mix.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it angers people, but that you don't want to work with this.
Then you don't want to work with those people because it's great when a swing goes on. You feel
Yeah.
I felt specifically with my cast like we would be there so supportive and just like they're we're cheering them on like
Yeah.
you can do this. Do you need anything? It's nice. It's good to be like that with your fellow castmates, whether they're swings or not.
And people walking down the street.
That's me. I feel like I'm the cheerleader for everyone.
So Christina, who's the dialect coach for this production in Vermont, has a question about accents and how they're coached for Broadway and touring productions, and what strategies did actors use to achieve authentic accents.
Well, we had a
I thought you were going to answer with an accent.
I should have, right? We had a dialect coach as well that worked with if you had a featured role or you had to change an accent from your normal speaking accent, which all of us did because we were set in Victorian England.
For Gavin.
Except for Gavin, because
Our Bert was from London.
he is from London. So unless you were from London, then you had to change your accent. And then in the role of Mrs. Corey, she hailed from the island, so I was doing a Jamaican/Caribbean accent. So I was coached on both of those. Had a little bit of the Caribbean in my blood already. Listened to a few of my crazy aunts. I was good to go.
It's not as probably. We probably don't get as much time with all of that as you
No.
probably imagine we do.
You do a lot of work on your
sadly
own.
a second thought kind of thing not second thought. It's very important, but it's not like we go through dialect classes or stuff like that. A lot of that stuff is stuff that you should be trained with as an actor.
Right.
It also helped that a lot of our creative team, well, most all of our creative team, they were all English.
So we
Our
constantly
resident
have this
director.
in our ears.
So you find yourself backstage even kind of talking with an accent sometimes because you're just used to doing it in the show and
Right.
being around those people. It's kind of like if you've ever visited London after a while, you're kind of
Right.
like, hello.
So
Hello,
a
I'm
strategy
David Caddick. What?
maybe that they could use would be like just listening.
Not Dick Van Dyke. Don't listen to Dick Van Dyke. That's the thing. Well, actually, Downton Abbey is probably a really solid resource
That's
for
a really, really great
accents.
idea.
But it also, throughout the show, even as the ensemble, you do different accents because
Right.
Seven Time is very southern.
Cockney
It's southern
Absolutely.
England.
You're not the high class
Yeah.
upper crust in that scene. So
Yeah, so it's a little bit more. Yeah, I
Like
go into
down and
Australia
down
sometimes.
to- a little bit, yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, you can use those different resources. Downton Abbey is a great one for. And actually, within that show, you'll notice that the show is written by Gillian Fellows, who wrote the book for Mary Poppins.
That's right.
And Mrs. What's her name?
I know who you're talking about. Who's supposed to
The
like,
cook. The
it's like
redhead
Mrs.
cook.
Brill.
She's literally Mrs. Brill.
That's Mrs.
Julian
Brill.
modeled her off of Mrs. Brill.
Right.
But you'll notice that even the people down the help in that show, they have different accents than the people higher up. So that's a really good.
That is
You
a
should have
good.
watched it.
Excellent.
And Pat, who is the chair of the promo committee for Mary Poppins, is wondering about the cast members in professional productions' roles in promotions. How often do you get called in to do promo? What does that look like? Are there expectations for you to keep up your own social media?
Well, I know personally on tour, I think Greg called me in to do 1.1 million TV spots around the country. So we went in and we would do like a little excerpt from the show, maybe 5 cast members, and then do an interview or what have you. So we had that element of promotion.
Because on tour, you're going to do different cities all the time, so you have to promote this show in every single city. So there's probably more opportunities on the road over the life of the show, whereas on Broadway, a lot of those opportunities, the chunk of them are at the beginning. It's the Tony Awards, the Today Show, The View.
There's a lot of FaceTime.
There's a lot of
the
those,
show opens.
a lot of those things, and then it's just kind of after that, it's
word of mouth.
Yeah.
I mean, social media to an extent.
Social media is interesting because when Mary Poppins was on Broadway and on tour, it was starting to become a bit more prominent, like Instagram.
Right. Not as
We're so old.
popular.
It
We're
wasn't,
so old.
It wasn't a thing then.
It wasn't, but now, I mean, obviously for your cast,
Yeah.
social media would be a great media outlet for you.
Yeah, and Disney's a tricky thing too because you have to be careful
With copyright laws
and what you're putting out there.
Absolutely.
So we actually now, if it's helpful, we now have policies for our company members that they can and cannot share certain things. They're not supposed to be taking pictures in costume. Actually, that's a new thing.
Oh,
They're not supposed to be taking pictures in costumes or with a set or anything like that. But we have a very active social media expert here on staff that takes care of all that stuff. And there's actually a social media captain with each show.
Oh,
so
that's
they can go around backstage and take pictures. And then our social media person, Greg Joskin and Angela, I think they kind of decide what goes up there.
I love working for Disney. I feel like we have so many things, so innovative.
Things.
Amazing.
So there are another series of questions more about like your professional paths and advice you have for people who would be interested in becoming professional performers like you both. So just generally, if you could first start by explaining what your professional path was in terms of training, schooling, and if there was a defining project or opportunity that really changed your whole trajectory. And Kiara, maybe if you could, in your response, talk about your current job as a teaching artist.
Okay.
How that, I know it's a lot.
No, it's good. Well, I started off as a dancer, like ballet school. I was fortunate enough to grow up in New York in the tri-state area, so I always had access to all the great schools here for performing arts, and my parents were adamant about me coming in, taking class at Ailey, Dance Theater of Harlem, Steps on Broadway, Broadway Dance Center. I had all of this at my disposal, which is amazing. So I started off as a dancer and then started to get interested in musical theater. I remember being in like a conservatory program in high school, and I did my first musical, and it was just like, oh my God, this is what I meant to do. Went off to college after that and got a degree in political science and a minor, I know, and I minored in dance. And then from there, I actually went to grad school, got my master's in dance and a concentration in musical theater. All throughout this time in college and grad school, I was doing professional shows already. So I made it a point to do summer stock, to go audition, and fortunately enough, I got cast in a lot. And so I caught the musical theater bug, came back to New York, did a bunch of shows here, did a bunch of shows on the road, got cast in Mary Poppins, and following Mary Poppins, I saw that there was a position open here at Disney Theatrical Group for a teaching artist, which to me was a perfect blend of like, oh wow, okay, you did go to grad school for something, so let's apply that. So I came here, got the job, and became a teaching artist for Disney. So what I get to do every day, which is amazing, is act, sing, and dance, teach what I know and what I love to students throughout the city, sometimes throughout the country, the Disney way. And it's, for example, right now we're working on Disney musicals in schools, where we go into schools that are not fortunate enough to have an arts program, and we build a musical theater program and teach the faculty there what to do for years to come. So it is a sustainable program. I guess that's it.
Yeah, and so the idea that teaching artists can teach but are still working
and still active.
artists.
I'm still a working actor, singer, dancer in New York City, but I also have found a way to share what I love to do with our youth.
So that's a job we don't really have in Vermont that much. So
Oh,
like a lot of
interesting.
people don't know that that's a path you could take or a job you could have. So.
Wow, it's interesting just saying out loud your life in like 3 minutes. I'm like, oh, wow, I've done a lot.
So was Mary Poppins the like big shift in your career, do you think, or was there one? Or?
No, it actually wasn't. Before Mary Poppins, maybe 3 shows before Mary Poppins, so I had done a lot of regional theater, and I did some community theater, so yay, community theater, regional theater, and then I got cast by Jennifer Holliday herself in a production. It was the 25th anniversary of Dreamgirls. So imagine this. I'm like, oh wow, yeah, I'm going to go audition for Dreamgirls. That's how I got my equity card, because I auditioned for Tony Award winner Jennifer Holliday, who I grew up, who was like, all hail Jennifer in my household, and she's sitting there behind the desk with producers and directors, and she's like, you know what? Come to the piano and sing with me. And we sang, and she vocalized me, and I'm like, knees are shaking because you're Jennifer Holliday. Amazing. And then I got the call the next day that I was cast in Dreamgirls. So
Where'd you do that?
We did it in Atlanta at Theater of the Stars. Yeah.
And Jeff, what was your path?
So I want to be on Broadway, and I didn't.
Bada bing, and that's
No, my path. I like sharing my path because I wish I knew that people have paths like this. I did community theater growing up. I didn't take dance class because as a boy, I was too afraid of being made fun of. Which, if you're a boy right now and you're sitting there and you're thinking, I don't want to be made fun of,
who cares?
Who cares?
Yes,
like, go to the next town over and take classes and make your mom swear she won't tell anyone. That's what I did. Or fly your flag and be like, this is awesome because it is awesome. So I started taking dance in high school secretly, which I wish I had started when I was 5 because it would have helped me out a lot more instead of being afraid. I went to school for musical theater right after high school. I went for 2 years, and then I was actually cut from my program after sophomore year at the Boston Conservatory because I didn't have what it takes, is what I was told.
Okay.
So I didn't have what it took. But I said, you know what? And I was the only one from my class, one of 3 people from my class that summer that got great summer stock work. So I was like, okay, I think I'm working.
I think I have what it takes.
I think I've got something here. I'm going to keep going with it. I was like, I'm just going to do this. So I moved to the city. I just started auditioning. I took classes at Broadway Dance Center and Steps, and there's a lot of new different places now you can take. This was just back then.
Right.
I auditioned nonstop. I took voice lessons. I saw a ton of theater. I had to teach myself there's no one road to get you to any single goal. You can take a million different roads. And I eventually relatively soon, I got a show in Philadelphia. Then I went on tour with Fosse, and right off of Fosse, I went on tour with 42nd Street.
Oh my goodness.
And then shortly after that, I got my equity card doing something, and I did the Radio City Christmas Spectacular for 2 years out of town. And after the first year, actually, a friend was like, Mary Poppins auditions for Broadway were coming up, and she's like, I have a feeling about this, you're going to get the show. And I was like, ooh, me too! And I went in and auditioned for the original Broadway company. I didn't get it.
Listen, oh my goodness, I have to talk about this really quick.
Didn't get it.
I went in with Tom Kosis. I'm not joking. I went in for Mary Poppins about 10 times to the point where Tom pulled me aside and said, Kiara, you don't even have to do this part of the audition anymore. Hand to God. He's like, just come back on this day. We know you can tap. We know you can sing. We know you can dance. There just was not an opening in the Broadway company for me at the time.
Right.
I had come back from doing a show, missed the initial audition for Mary Poppins, went in 10 times, and then finally, on my 11th time, they're like, okay, you're cast in the first National Broadway tour. So,
which is also a good story to bring up. There's no one way because, so a year later, so I didn't get it, and I went out, I did Radio City the following Christmas, and I came back, and I was kind of in a place where I was like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. It's hard. It's a very hard lifestyle.
It is. You have to have a tough skin.
Yeah, so
for sure.
I was kind of like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. I started looking at going back to school, and my agent sent me in for 2 different Broadway shows, and all of a sudden I was going back and forth. I was at Chelsea Studios auditioning for Young Frankenstein, and then I would go to the other studio audition for Mary Poppins, and all within one. I auditioned for Mary Poppins all in one day.
Wow. And
then I didn't hear anything for about 4 weeks, and then I got called into the New Amsterdam Theater. I sang downstairs for our music director, and I got the call the next day.
Everyone's path is different.
It's so different.
Sure.
So, as young people, are they all young people? Or
no, they're some adults.
So, wherever you're
at,
take this advice from this 30-something. Yeah. So,
and actually,
defining moment, though.
Yeah, defining moment, yeah.
Was it, specifically. It was in that, until then, I didn't give my career enough value. I was like, I don't have my Broadway credit, blah, blah, blah. Oh, it's just this tour of, non-equity tour of whatever. And then actually on opening night, of my first night on Broadway, I did Expialidocious during the reprise.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, this is just another theater. This is just another theater. And this is pretty awesome theater, and this is pretty great. But I kind of had this whole think after. I was like, why did I not value those things? Broadway doesn't define success, and that was my realization in the moment. So Broadway's not the be-all, end-all. You can do really amazing work. A lot of times, I think people have more fun doing tours because the energy is always churning because you're always going to new theaters, whereas on Broadway, there are some shows where I know people, it's not as fun because it gets a little bit more complacent, but yeah, and I don't perform anymore. I actually work here at Disney with Tim.
So there is a cast member who's moving here to the city in the fall and asks, he doesn't have a lot of contacts, so wondering what's the best way to find auditions for theater and film.
Honestly, go grab yourself a newspaper called Backstage.
Is it
Oh my
still a
goodness, do
newspaper?
they
Is
still
it
have
online?
newspapers? I'm old, you guys.
Do they do it? Or
They have it online
No,
too.
online.
There
Okay,
is
now.
still Backstage, the publication,
Hardcover,
but now you can also find it online. Just, guys, honestly,
Playbill.com, there's a
you
breakdown.
have so many
That was good.
resources that we did not have necessarily when we were growing up because you have the internet. Go online. You can find auditions, playbill.com, backstage.com. Even go on the Equity website and you can access auditions, and sometimes they'll see non-equity people if you don't have your card, and that's
Especially if you're a guy.
Especially if you're a
Unfortunately,
guy.
guys, usually at the equity calls, unless it's crazy, guys, non-equity guys will eventually
Right.
be seen.
Right.
Do they know what equity is?
Yeah. They
Sorry,
should.
I don't mean to
Yeah.
offend.
Yeah.
But
just go for
So-
everything. I mean,
Wow.
we both auditioned like crazy and that's how you book jobs. And then
that's how you book jobs.
That's
You
how
have to audition.
you have to audition.
You have, and not just like once a month.
No.
Like you
become
have
a
to,
familiar face.
and auditioning is its own skill set.
Absolutely.
Go to everything.
Go to everything.
all the time for a while, and then get smart about what you're actually right for. Because people will get ticked off if they see you over and over and over again, and I'm going for Dreamgirls. Like if I keep going for Dreamgirls, eventually they're going to be like, "Why are you here? You're not right for Dreamgirls."
And I'm not Elle Wood, so I mean, do you know what I mean?
Stop auditioning for Elle Wood, Kiara. So first, do it with experience and try to go to as many as possible.
Absolutely.
Even as you get into a more rich career, you can't stop auditioning because you'll stop working, and nobody's going to just give you work.
Absolutely.
Donna Murphy, McKechnie, Pride Murphy as well. Like these are big people in our world that don't work. They went through massive periods of not working, and so probably not because they weren't trying, but you always have to show up.
You have to show up. I mean, it's about right place, right time, but it's also about putting forth effort. And another piece of advice when you're in the city is don't. Sorry, let me think about what I want to say. You want to be well-rounded, so don't just section yourself into just one area. Like, I'm a great singer, and that's all I'm going to work on.
Especially these days.
Especially these days, you have to be a triple threat. I mean, work on your acting, acting, singing, dancing as much as you can, and just make everything better. I always say, well, I'm great at this. I can be greater because there's someone right behind me who already has this times 10 of my skill set in their back pocket. So
yeah, be well-rounded. Do other things. Do have a life outside of this because this world will just with any work, you have to have something else that you do. Because if your world is only completely immersed in musical theater, the only thing you'll be really, really, really good at playing on stage will be a musical theater performer.
That's right.
So if read a lot of books,
read the newspaper,
do a lot, go see places, travel, volunteer. Even people, if you're trying to figure out if you want to go to school for this, musical theater majors are not the only way to get there. Neither are theater majors.
That's right.
There's a lot of ways to get here, and quite honestly, I'm not a fan of musical theater programs, but that.
And talk to as many people.
You're welcome to email us if you have questions. I'm happy to share my feelings on musical theater.
Talk to as many different people as you can. Like, I am fortunate enough to have friends who are not just in theater. I love the fact that I can talk to my girlfriend who's a lawyer and, hear what her world is like. Or my friend who, works in advertising. Don't just stay in your own little bubble. I think it's important.
So, do you have a piece of advice that you received from somebody associated with Mary Poppins or not that you'll carry with you throughout your career that has kind of touched you and stuck with you?
Well, one of them is be well-rounded, for sure. Let me think about something else. Do you have anything?
I don't know how this applies, but I remember it. I remember our resident director, this guy named Ants, he had also, and continues to work on The Lion King. And Lion King, if you do a long-running show, Lion King is its own monster in that its success only continues to increase. It's an amazing show. But there's a little bit more give in terms of the quality of the show. Whereas Mary Poppins, she had a little bit more of a fight to keep the show going as long. And I remember him pulling us all aside as a company and saying, listen, Julie Taymor said this about Lion King, is that when you open a show, you turn the, what are those called? The timer, the egg timer? Egg timer?
No, the
sugar?
Like the sand, like
the salt,
Wizard of
sands,
Oz.
The glass thing, like in
Yeah.
Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
It's like when you open a show, you turn it on its head, and it's all full. And over time, it's going to slowly, everything's going to start to trickle to the bottom. And shows can be very much like that. You have to think of it more as a handful of sand and that you have your fingers tight together and you keep it close, because every time you lose a piece of sand, there goes a little piece of the show, and you can't. You've got to keep it all in your hands. And I don't know if that applies to anything, but I remember.
Makes perfect
did I tell
sense.
you guys
Yeah,
that?
you did.
I remember that specifically. Julie Taymor told him that.
I also learned something in doing Mary Poppins. The world is so small, and be nice to everyone. I mean, you just never know.
I mean, I work upstairs at Disney now
Right.
because I was a decent person.
Right,
upstairs,
and I
so
work
you
in
never
the
know.
arts and education department with Tim because I think I was a really nice team player and nice person.
Yeah.
So you just never know. No one wants to work with someone who's going to be a Debbie Downer or mean, or it's just not worth it. You're here in a great job or experience in the theater, so make the most of it.
That's any job.
Yeah, that's any job, exactly.
So circling back to Mary Poppins for our last question, if you can remember, what's the most magical moment that you can remember from your time in Mary Poppins?
I have two.
And then any closing thoughts that you might have for someone who is currently in the show? Anything that you want to...
Well, since you have yours already, I have to think about it for a second. Go ahead.
I just remember on my closing night, my first closing night, because I came back to the show. I had done the show for like 3 years or something like that, and it was my Broadway debut. It was a very special time. On my closing night, I remember I had my Starlighter costume on, which were covered in glass stars that you could cut yourself on. And I was standing in the wing, and my costume was made for me. It was a very, it was special. I was standing in the wings of my last show, and the entire show I did it, and I held it together, and I was like, okay. And I was standing in the wings, stage right, probably like 3, and I could see the Banks family turn up stage to whatever, and Mary's flying out, and they say goodbye, Mary, and it swells into the Let's Go Fly Kite. I just remember going,
over.
just like literally like this, heaving sob, and but like all my company members came around me, and were like giving me this big hug, and like during the call, everyone like. Melissa Lone was to my right. She was just squeezing my hand so tight, and every single cast member that came out for their bow, they'd like bow, and almost every one of them like blew me a kiss across the stage, and it was just like, it was really at the end of the day that show really to me is more about the relationships,
Absolutely,
and the family that all those people became to me, because a lot of those people are still in my life and very near and dear to me. So it just kind of culminated like that. But the most magical moment, I think. As a swing, whenever I'd watch it, because swings get to watch the show a lot because they have to figure out what they're doing, but I always watch the Gingerbread Stars scene because it's just this quiet moment that's just so simple. The character, George Banks, becomes so vulnerable for really the first time in the show, and it goes back to kind of the Mrs. Corey scene where it's like you see that child in him, and really that's what the entire show is really, to me, I think about that moment, centered around that moment, and
absolutely.
Bert sings Spoonful of Sugar, and there's just something about the music in there that's just really... Oh, I miss it.
I know, I miss it too! I know. One of my favorite parts or moments was night after night, 8 shows a week we do the show, but there was a moment of it was a moment of silence, and you were prepping for Step in Time. So if you were not one of the singers in the beginning of Step in Time with Bert,
Before the drop went up,
before the drop went up,
you were upstage.
I was upstage. Yes,
I agree with you.
You're presetting on a chimney, and you're just there, and it's silence because people are already starting to sing the song. But it was something about the way the music vamped, and we would just look around, and and you just have this infectious energy, then, and everyone would be so amped. And I just remember night after night saying, "This is so amazing!" Like just looking at your friends, they were family. Once you do the show, I feel like we are still the tightest. That's the tightest cast I've ever been a part of. We are still family. I mean, we've seen each other through like births and deaths and marriages and divorces, and you just become. You have to cherish those moments. And so, Step in Time. That was.
Yeah.
I think that's my magical moment.
We'd all bump brushes before.
Yeah,
did you do that?
yeah, we did.
We'd all bump the ends of our brushes.
Like,
so do it.
Do it before Step in Time.
Waiting,
Listen for that.
Bump the end of your brushes.
Yeah.
You have to do it to every single sweep before you go on. It's just a moment
and
to unify each other.
And people would have their secret handshakes, and we would just like
because that's what Step in Time is about. It's about brotherhood.
It
a lot of it for the sweeps, and I remember that moment. And the lights would go down.
Lights would go down, and you're just waiting.
You're standing on top of your giant chimney in the pitch dark, being like, "I'm gonna fall off this," and then you get this like glorious Broadway reveal. The curtain
amazing.
Goes.
That was one of my favorite moments.
But there was the second part of that question.
Just any parting advice that you have about the show,
have
about the
fun
themes,
in the show, because even though you do it for years and years, it's over in a blink of an eye. You do it years and years, or you can do it for a weekend, and it goes so fast. And I miss it. Like we're talking about it right now. Is it coming back to Broadway, Jeff? I have to ask him.
It's not right now. My advice for people doing it, it's different when you just do it for a short time.
Yeah.
I think I think the show is the music's very special to me. I think it's very special to a lot of people, and just do it. Don't overdo the magic. It's not really about it's about people and love and enjoy each other, have fun. Don't fall down.
Don't fall down.
I did that.
Oh, me too. Doing those turns.
Yeah,
have a great time. Cherish each other in the moments, and it's magical. So it's going to be magical whether you do it for a weekend or for 4 years.
Stretch your mind beyond fantastic.
Oh, anything can happen if you let it.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.